Burnout isn't real. I just got off the phone with an 8-figure plus CEO that was contemplating shutting down his entire business because he felt burnt out. I'm gonna release my side of the conversation with him so that I can show you the unlocks that we went through. Never done this before. It's an incredibly powerful call. You can unlock the unlimited motivation that I think he was able to tap into by the end of it. You do not have mental illness. You are not mentally unhealthy. You do not have anything wrong with you. If anything, you have a lot of stuff right with you. I think that you are really hard on yourself. You're not only doing great, you're doing extraordinary. Like, you're doing very well. And so whatever voices you have in your life, internal or external, that are telling you otherwise, you need to stop listening to them. I tweeted this morning and I was thinking about you. Do not listen to people whose dreams for your life are smaller than yours. Like parents, friends. Only person who knows how big you dream is you. And if someone does have bigger dreams for you than you do, then you should absolutely listen to them. You know what I mean? But if you don't, then their advice is not valid. That you don't share a common future. And most advice should come from a shared common goal. But most people give advice that serves them through your behavior, which is another way called manipulation. Like, the difference between help and manipulation is intention. All we do when we communicate with anyone in general is to manipulate their behavior or change their behavior. Our goal is to change your behavior from this call. I hope that this decreases your stress level because it reframes how you act in the company, and in so doing, allows you to go further. Because right now, what feels unsustainable to you is unsustainable because you've defined it as unsustainable. What happens is people start defining normal as good, and that is the problem. Normal is normal. Normal is average. And so we have to be different than average or different than normal or extraordinary in order to achieve an extraordinary outcome. I want to say Andy Grove, who said, "Only the paranoid survive." Arguably one of the GOAT operators of the century, who basically turned Intel around, saying that only the paranoid survive. And you hear like Steve Jobs, right? He was obsessive and he was difficult to deal with. And so if we try and use standard, is this guy normal? The obvious answer is no, and I hope not. And so a lot of these character traits that I feel like I've heard you say about yourself that are set in a negative light, said differently, it's just they are not the same as other people. Well, we can't hope to have a different outcome from other people and then also hope to have the same behaviors, viewpoints, beliefs, and skill sets, right? So like, you gotta let your lungs adjust the altitude. Like, you just went up like 3 rungs of success. You know what I mean? From when you and I started talking, whatever, a year ago almost, I think. Not even, fuck. It's been like 6-7 months. And the business has tripled. What's interesting though is that you were in pain then, and I would say that you're in equal pain now. Changing the circumstances or our conditions is not going to change how you feel. We changed your conditions. We actually massively improved them. Your feelings didn't change, which means that the feelings are not valid. Doesn't mean they don't exist. It just doesn't mean that we have to listen to them. Managing stress is a learned skill. It doesn't come from changing conditions. Anything external does not influence how stressed you are. The judgment you have about the external is what influences how stressed you are. I don't like the term mindset. You know what I mean? I hate it overall. But in terms of like reframing and perspective shifts, I think those are powerful to think through, which is at the end of your life, you will probably be equally satisfied and dissatisfied. There will be things that you will wish you would have accomplished, and there will be things that you will be proud that you had done. The same as right now. And so I think it's much more about figuring out how to separate your internal dialogue and feelings, or at least response to your feelings, from the external. You don't have to go through the fire. The fire gives you evidence that you have the trait. You can be a patient person but never been tested. But the moment you're tested, you have evidence that you are patient. So all it does is it gives us reinforcement that what we thought about ourselves all along was true. What is the practice of doing this? It's being able to separate and identify when you feel stressed. Step 1, I feel stressed. I feel it. And whatever your triggers are. For me, I feel tight in my chest. That's how I know that I start feeling stressed. So when I feel that, I think, okay, what is causing this? What is the trigger that I have chosen to judge as good or bad? What is the label that I'm ascribing to a situation? You have to peel back the layer and say, what is it? And then usually, if you take it all the way down, it means that you think you're going to die. Sales were low today. which means sales are going to be low forever, which means I'm going to have to fire everyone, which means everyone's going to hate me, and I'm going to be isolated and alone, and I'm going to die. Right? Just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. Thoughts are not true. Not all thoughts are true. They're just thoughts. Same as feelings. They're literally just chemicals in your brain that are meant to keep you alive, not to help you succeed. When you feel stressed, stop and be like, I'm feeling emotion here. I wonder what is causing this. What am I labeling as bad? Do I need to change anything about this external condition? Probably not. So do I think that law of large numbers is that if I have 365 days and I did the exact same thing, there's going to be days that are in the bottom 10% and days that are in the top 10% with the exact same conditions, like in terms of behaviors? The answer is yes. And so I just describe this as like, this just might be one of those bottom 10% days. And bottom 10% days happen every 10 days. Independent. It's 3 a month. It's almost every other, every week-ish. And even of those 36 days, you might even be in a bottom 10% day of those, which is a bottom 1% day. 3.6 days a year. Fucking horrible days. But does it mean we need to change our behavior? Probably not. Because our behavior over a long trend line has tripled this business. I feel for how much you beat yourself up because I too beat myself up. And I do know what it's like to be miserable. And I prefer not being miserable if I have a purpose. Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. The man's in a fucking in the Holocaust, right? And he's like happy-ish. So if he can be happy there, then me making a fuckload of money, being young and healthy and married in the most developed country in the world, do I really have any reason? When COVID hit, the first 3 weeks, a shitload of gyms closed. My judgment of that was that they were people who wanted to have a reason that was socially acceptable for losing. They were just waiting. And then finally they had an out that they could be like, COVID. And everybody would be like, shucks. Not to say that external conditions don't affect things. They do. But the wave of gyms that I saw that really wanted to keep going but couldn't happened at like month 9 when the second shutdown happened. They ran out of cash. They literally couldn't keep the doors open. But the ones that happened in the beginning had lost the will to fight. And so my goal for this call was to renew your will to fight, because if we can separate your internal feelings from the external conditions that are around you, you can be unbelievably successful. Now, if it is uncomfortable, of course it is. It's expected to be. That's why it's growing pains, because if you were doing the same thing you were doing before, then you would already have adapted to it, which is why, like I said, you got to let your lungs adjust to the air. It's thinner. Fewer people can stand it. There's more pressure. But it does normalize. Just like when you look back at when you were running $1 million business and you were stressed out of your mind then, you're equally stressed out now. But you would wish to have the problems you had with $1 million business because you have adjusted. Your lungs are stronger now. The things that you're doing are not even impossible. They've been well documented and done for decades by other companies. So it's purely between your ears, which is good news because it means all we have to do is reframe reality. When you feel stress, you do not need to behave stressfully because the plan is solid. We just need our commitment to the plan to be just as solid. I think you just have to be able to create space. If you think about one of those Yeti mugs, you know the one I'm talking about? You can have something hot on the inside and it's not hot, you can hold it and it stays hot for a while. The difference is that there's separation, there's air between the outside and the inside. It could be cold outside, it could be hot outside. It's not gonna change the temperature on the inside of the bottle. It's like you need to be more like a Yeti. Right now, if it gets colder, your inside gets colder. If it gets hotter, the inside gets hotter. But the more you can stay constant, independent of the external conditions, I feel stressed, air. That's because I have labeled something externally as hot. But is it? I have an external stressor. Do I need to feel stressed? Space. What if this were good? What if this is normal? What if this is to be expected? What if this is just a bottom 10% day and it's just statistics? Of course I'm gonna have a bottom 10% day. 1 out of 10 days is bottom 10%. And on the flip side, something internally is off, space, it doesn't mean that I need to act that way. So it's bidirectional. If you delay the space between when you feel something and when you behave, I promise you the behaviors that you will do after you had some space will be more aligned with your long-term goals. To have the expectation that building a business that's going to set you up for the rest of your life is going to be easy is ridiculous. The reason it is difficult for people is because you have to change how you view reality. And you have that power. You're super introspective, you're very caring, you have all the character traits of an excellent CEO. The only thing that you suffer from is insecurity and second guessing. Less emotionally reactive, more confident. Being able to continue to do without seeing the result of your doing. If you embody those traits, this company will grow beyond what I think you expect.